Welcome to Divisive Issues, a comic book podcast where we talk about comic books. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
Here we are, guys.
Haven't seen you guys in a while.
Yeah.
Just disregard Phil.
A long time ago, back in November, on the Common Radio Facebook group, we had a poll for which Doctor Strange story we should do to tie into the movie coming out. And then other things happened in November that made us not want to talk about Doctor Strange as much anymore. So we postponed it until now. And now we're going to fulfill the results of that poll, which was a tie. So we're doing all the Doctor Strange stories ever made. No, but all the ones we posted.
We're changing Divisive Issues to Doctor Strange issues, and we're just going to do a comic book podcast devoted to him because he is a great, handsome man.
Yeah.
That's why, because he's handsome.
Emphasis on handsome.
So the story, the first story we pitched was a story where Doctor Strange meets the creator of the universe and wins his genesis. Spoilers, but that's how I knew the book, so fuck you. Like, spoilers, the way it's pitched to most people is spoilers, yes. But
Wait,
it was...
who are you saying fuck you to, Phil, or the listeners?
Fuck
It's
everyone.
always Phil.
Okay.
Oh, never mind. I was wrong.
It's always Phil and everyone else.
Yeah.
Considerable amount of more people.
It's always at least Phil.
So the story was written by Steve Englehart, who's one of my my favorite underrated writers. I mentioned him before. He wrote the story of Batman and the Laughing Fish, the one that Joker makes. He wrote the original comic it's based on.
Oh, I only saw...
And the episode is very closely related to the comic.
Sly, can I make a confession to you?
Yeah.
Englehart is one of my favorite writers that we've read on this show.
That's cool, because he's one of my favorite writers, too.
Is that a confession, or is that like I don't know. Confessions are usually dark, you know? That seems like a good thing.
I view Englehart and Gerber, who wrote Howard the Duck, as like the guys from the late 70s that were like, hey, let's make comics real things.
Yeah.
I know I said this to someone at some point, but I really, reading these comics, it's always so impressive to me, because I'm like, I like a lot of the other stuff we read, and I like superhero comics, but it's just like there's so many tropes that are very common in every other superhero comic we read that when I read Doctor Strange, I can't even feel like I can't believe it's the same studio, because it just feels like it's so different and cool.
Yeah, it's way, like... Everyone knows that his whole thing is that he uses magic and is the master of the mystic art.
I love that we live in a world where you could say things about Doctor Strange like, everybody knows this.
Yeah. It's such a strange comparison to regular superheroes and what they have to deal with, because he has to deal with everything on such another level, and he's always using his powers to do something.
Yeah.
And the thing that's, I think, stands out, the thing that drew me to Doctor Strange, because I started Sly's recommendations with the Stan Lee stuff, like the earlier stuff, and the thing that drew me to it is when Marvel Comics like really started picking up in the 60s, Doctor Strange was the character that like college kids loved and like hippies loved, and I was like, I wonder why, and then I read it, I was like, oh,
they were on drugs, and this is really trippy. Yeah. No, it gets really abstract like every time, or in the two comics we've read.
Yeah, at least in Englehart stuff.
Doctor Strange was famous in the 60s even for, because the world he visits, if you watch the Doctor Strange movie, the dark dimension in that movie is pretty much the way it was in the comics. Like it's very inspired by the original artist Steve Ditko's art. Like it was always very trippy from the get-go.
He was created by the same creative team that created Spider-Man, like the most grounded hero ever. So it's so cool seeing their style done in like the total opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
But just to get into the artist real quick, Frank Brunner, unfortunately, he did not do that much comic work. He did a lot in the 70s. He did Howard the Duck. He did Man-Thing. But he kind of moved towards animation and moved to Hollywood and worked on animation. He worked on Johnny Quest.
That's awesome.
And he worked on the animated X-Men series, too. So.
Oh, that's cool.
I really like this art. There's the issue in the second arc we're going to cover. I think it's the second issue. That one was really cool. Like the art that you did there.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone like gives Englehart a lot of credit, but I think Brunner is equally impressive in like why these stories are so good.
Yeah, and his entire run with Englehart, Steve Englehart stayed on afterwards, but the Brunner run with Englehart is collected in one trade called A Separate Reality, and we're doing the entirety of it in this episode.
Yeah, and Marvel just had an Epic collection that has a bunch of other stuff in it leading up to this, but this is like the second half of the book.
Yeah. So the story begins. It's actually just for a little backstory because that's what I love doing.
The lore.
And it's actually very relevant because Engelhart and Brunner came in the torrent, and ended in a torrent, basically
Like piracy.
and it started in chaos, ended in chaos, and they were like this.
Chaos Emeralds.
They were like the eye of the hurricane in a very chaotic period in Doctor Strange because. Basically, Doctor Strange, after a long time of having no ongoing series, he was just a member of the Defenders, a superior team he led for a long time. And finally, Marvel was like, let's have him back in his own series. But and he started appearing in Marvel Premiere. But what happened was every issue, if you read that story, every issue was a different, almost every issue was a different creative team, and no one had any idea where the story was going. And every issue said, "Oh, you think that was the mastermind, but mastermind was actually this guy. Oh, you think that was the mastermind, mastermind is actually this guy." And finally, one writer name drop. What's his fucking name? I forgot his name. The guy from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Shuggorath, the tentacle monster from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. They dropped his name, but they didn't even describe who he was. And finally, Engelhart came in and he defined him as like an like a Cthulhu-esque ancient god,
Lovecraftian deity.
And the only way he could come into our world was through his polar opposite, which was Doctor Strange's mentor, the Ancient One. In the comics, he was an Asian mystical stereotype, not Tilda Swinton.
Not Tilda Swinton.
This was a huge. This decision by Engelhart was a huge changing point in Doctor Strange because Doctor Strange had to kill the Ancient One in order to prevent. The Elder God from coming into our world, and this was a huge change because now Doctor Strange was the Sorcerer Supreme of the Marvel Universe. He was the most powerful magical figure in the entire Marvel Universe.
And and this took decades for him to get to this level.
Yeah.
Or I guess probably 10, 15 years, maybe not decades.
Yeah, but he started in the 60s and it was like the late 70s when this happened.
Yeah. So it's not like he wasn't the Sorcerer Supreme from the very beginning.
Yeah.
He only at the point where we're jumping in, he had just become the Sorcerer Supreme.
Chalupa Supreme.
Yeah, so the story opens up. The story actually opens up immediately after him contemplating what he did and how he killed the Ancient One. And basically, he meets up with his love interest, Clea, who, if you watch the Doctor Strange movie and saw the Dark Dimension, she's actually a person from the Dark Dimension who basically allied to Doctor Strange, and she was banished to our dimension. And she became his apprentice. And Doctor Strange makes her his apprentice, saying, "I'm Sorcerer Supreme, so now you're my apprentice, as well as my lover." So, bonus.
Yeah.
Like the snap.
Got him.
Yeah. And another supporting character is Wong, who in the comics was more of a servant martial artist type, and generally pretty useless. I would compare him to the Krillin of Doctor Strange.
Or the Guardian.
Wait, Guardian, like the Superman character?
Yeah. It's a joke, Ryan.
He just shows up and just gets beaten. That's his job.
Oh,
to
okay.
show, like,
that makes sense.
This guy is a hostile threat, and he can beat up this useless guy.
I thought there was another DBZ character named Guardian. I didn't know.
Like that was the first striking thing to me when I read it, because I went into this not really expecting to like Doctor Strange, because I'm like, whatever, like this wizard in blue pajamas isn't like.
Have you seen the movie, Darryl?
Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
I saw it after I read this though.
Oh, okay.
And so when I was reading this, I thought it was really cool that it just starts with him thinking about like meditating on life and what his own existence means. And he said he was meditating in the desert to delve into his soul, to weigh the intangibles that truly compose his being, and determine whether he is pleased with the balance.
And also contemplating his connection to life itself and how every living thing now is special to him because he sees the magic in it.
Yeah, he picks up like an iguana. It's like even this, such like a tiny thing, having to live means to influence the cosmos by your actions and just your presence.
Yeah, and he says, like, now I'm the Sorcerer Supreme. I'm basically all-powerful. Shouldn't I be more than just, like, a superhero? And he even starts pondering the very nature of existence itself, where he's like, the opposite of life is not death, it is non-existence.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, even by living and dying, you're still part of this great cycle in the cosmos. And I just... Even though I've read this before, I forgot how immediately this arc is just like, this is some fucking
it's immediately different from anything like we've read in a while.
Yeah, it's like, it's so interesting because it's not the typical, like, who's the villain gonna be? Let's go fight them. Even though there are villains, but they're not really. They're like these weird abstracts, like, if the villain is death, like, that's, like, you know, it's not like a super villain, you know?
Yeah.
So Doctor Strange, now that he's all powerful, decides he's gonna go meet up with Baron Mordo, his old rival. If you watch the movie, you know that Baron Mordo was another student of the Ancient One,
Spoilers.
and basically, fuck you. But you know that. But in the comics, actually, the reason why Baron Mordo betrays Ancient One, Doctor Strange, is actually because Doctor Strange was so much better than him. He literally is the Krillin of Doctor Strange, and that's why I actually like him. And
No, he's not the Krillin. He's the Vegeta to Goku.
Yeah.
no, but Vegeta is more competent. Like the thing I like about Baron Mordo is Doctor Strange outclassed him ages ago, but he still finds shady, manipulative ways to be on his level as we'll get into the
so
story.
he's kind of like Piccolo, or
Piccolo, yeah,
way
yeah.
God
beneath
damn it,
him.
you fucking nerds.
Yeah.
There is a pretty good joke, though, that shows that, like, it's not all super heavy cerebral, where Clea and Wong pick him up in a Jeep, and Doctor Strange is like, okay, let's drive through the desert. And then they're like, wait, aren't you Sorcerer Supreme? And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he just teleports.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we paid a deposit on that Jeep. And he's like, I brought it back. Don't worry, man.
Yeah.
So he goes to Baron Mordo's place, and he sees. He goes to Transylvania, which is Baron Mordo's hometown. He's not a black guy.
Yeah,
in
at
the
first I was
comics.
like, oh my god, is Mordo Dracula? When I was first
I
reading
thought
this.
that too.
I got so excited.
He's very inspired by that kind of.
Dracula's too busy fighting Thor.
Yeah. But as he goes looking around for Baron Mordo, he gets hypnotized by a sexy gypsy who does hypnotism on him.
It also reminds me of every D&D campaign I've ever played with Phil, where Doctor Strange walks in, he's like, I have to cast Detect Evil. Are there any bad guys here?
I thought that too.
And so it turns out Baron Mordo stole this gypsy's book, which was the Book of Cagliostro, who was an actual figure in history who pretended to be a magician and actual sorcerer. Which I find interesting because I like really what Stephen Leggins run is he infuses magic history into the actual entire run.
Yeah, that's always
Yeah.
fun.
But she dies getting the book, and that frees Doctor Strange because they fight a big demon monster, and that kills her. And
This stuff was so like this is the beginning of each of Englehart's arcs were the least interesting for me because they're both like the most normal. It's also the entire time he has to find a way to get Doctor Strange in a place where he wants him, despite him being so powerful. Like that he somehow gets transfixed by a gypsy's dance. It's like, come on, man, you're the strongest wizard in the universe, and a gypsy dances, and you're like, now I will do your bidding.
His problem is that he's so powerful, but he's still like a human.
yeah.
And they reveal what the book does, right?
It's a Book of Time by Cagliostro, and Doctor Strange at the end of the story uses it to go back in time.
Yeah, it's basically, it's a spell book that lets you change the past without affecting yourself. So, like, it avoids that, like, well, then wouldn't you have never been born kind of thing? So it lets you detach yourself from time.
Yeah, I
and
like how they
change
explain that
past.
too. They're like, this is a paradox-proof magic, okay?
Yeah.
So next issue, they start going through time, and by they I mean Doctor Strange. And
He meets up with Mordo as it's going through time.
yeah, and he's like, Baron Mordo stole the book, so I gotta go get it from him. Anyway, he's flying around through time, and
They fight for a little bit, shooting
Yeah, it's just some
magic at each other.
yeah,
But it turns out their magic, as they're going back in time, their magic is getting weaker and
for
weaker.
some reason.
Yeah.
And they go back to when Cagliostro lived, who was the book's author, obviously. And Cagliostro, what, he fights him and leaves or something?
But he's like, I don't give a fuck about you. You can stay in my house for now, but I'm leaving, and he leaves.
Yeah. So he dresses up as Cagliostro.
Doctor Strange does.
Doctor Strange does. So when Mordo shows up to meet him, he's like, "Oh, hello," and then he's like, "I'm actually Doctor Strange." He beats Doctor Strange beats Mordo, and then there's more time traveling going on, right?
But basically, like a time loop happens, and Doctor Strange goes. He meets himself meeting him. Like when Doctor Strange first came in, that happens again, but this time with Doctor Strange as Cagliostro instead of Cagliostro. Doctor Strange's like, what's going on? And he realizes that Cagliostro's fucking up time with his magic.
Yeah.
Right. And then basically they go back in time more, and it gets revealed that Cagliostro is actually the villain, who is a time traveler from way in the future, and
His name is Sizeneg.
I pronounced it Siseneg.
I thought it was Siseneg too.
Yeah.
Siseneg makes more sense.
I kept thinking seismic, but Sizeneg.
Well, Siseneg or Seisnig, apparently the way the world works is at any point in time, there's only X amount of magic that can exist in the world. It's like a finite amount. So if you have, a million sorcerers, they all have to share out of that little piece of magic. But if there was only one sorcerer, he would have command over all of it. So his
And in the future, there's so many sorcerers that Cagliostro's like, I'm not that powerful, so I'm going back in time to make sure I get more of it.
right. So he's basically going to all these different timelines or time periods and trying to kill all the other sorcerers that exist, so that eventually there's only him. And
Yeah, and he wants to become like supreme ruler of the universe.
yeah, and he's like, if I can tap into all of the magic in the world by myself, I'll basically become a god.
Yeah. So he goes back to Genesis, origin of times, and Strange Mortal follow him.
Yeah, so that's what he wants to do. He wants to go like to the very beginning of the universe.
So then we begin Seisnig Genesis, the book of Revelations. And it starts with like chapter 1, and Seisnig spake unto them, saying, I am wizard from the future, journeying to the past, to the dawn of creation. And throughout this issue, it's basically Mordo and Doctor Strange following Seisnig and witnessing him like going throughout the land and trying to influence him different ways, where Doctor Strange is trying to influence like his humane aspects and trying to get him not to kill people that he encounters, and Mordo at the same time is just trying to like bow to him, like feverishly.
He's basically like sucking up to him. He's like, no, come on, let me take me with
He's like,
you.
if you're gonna kill all the other sorcerers, like at least I can be this guy's like bitch.
Yeah, and then but then they'll make you the second best sorcerer in the universe.
That's
so
pretty fucking
that's
good.
still pretty good.
Yeah.
So it starts off, and this is not biblical, but it's with Lancelot fighting a dragon.
That's not in the Bible?
Really? That's weird. I thought that was.
Yeah, it was close, but no.
Have you read the King Arthur translation?
And then they go back to, I think it's Babylon.
No, they
Or
go.
the Tower of Babel.
But first of Lancelot, what happened? The whole point of that scene is that they save Sir Lancelot, and then Doctor Strange saves Sir Lancelot, and he's like, "Oh yeah, he saves Sir Lancelot. I'm such a good guy." And Moro goes to Sisnex saying, "You see this fucking idiot? He saves Sir Lancelot. Now he's going to Lancelot's going to cause the destruction of Camelot. See, compassion is shit. It sucks. Just be a strong god and control everything, basically."
Humans sow the seed of their own destruction through their willful nature. You are right to rise above them, Seisnig. People cannot control themselves. They need to be controlled by someone strong, by you.
So basically, I'm Doctor Strange being like, be nice, and Mordo is sly, and he's like, no, fuck everybody.
People are inherently evil. They need an authoritarian ruler to rule over them.
Well,
Happy January 20th, guys.
yeah, I mean, Lancelot does fuck everything up, so it's like.
Yeah.
So then they return back in time to...
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah. That's where they are.
Yeah.
And
And
then...
he sees all these gay people, so he's like, I have to destroy this place.
Well, in the Bible version, but in this version, they're all sorcerers, like contesting Sisnex. So Sisnex like, fuck you, and he kills them all.
Yeah, they're all shooting their lasers at them, and Doctor Strange tries to stop it, but Seisnig just blows them all up, and it's like, oh man, he's just getting stronger and stronger. So then they go back to... Now Seisnig's basically a floating head, or like a glowing radiant head.
He's the son from Teletubbies.
Yeah.
They go back to the near the dawn of creation with dinosaurs. Well, I guess that's not
not even
that-
close.
That's
still
not that
billions
near.
and billions of years.
It's closer than...
In the Bible, according to the Bible, it is.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
And then here, Shumagorath's there, and he's just tormenting these ape people.
This is one of my favorite things.
I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, it's real crazy, and it's Doctor Strange. Like he has, because they're going, his power's getting trained by Seisnig. He can't really fight him, so he's like, Seisnig, you have to do something to save them. Like you need to save humanity.
Yeah. But Sisnex is finally like, yes, I can rise above humanity, but I can't abandon it fully. And he saves the last two apes and sends Shumagorath to another dimension.
Which is like a loop to where, like, it explains how Shumagorath left Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cool, and like the art here is like very trippy, like we were saying. Like you see like Earth becoming like this like molten ball, and like it's like the start of the universe in reverse, and then you see this giant head being like, I'm God, and like it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and so as we're drawing to the actual dawn of creation and the cosmos begins uncreating itself, that's where Seisnig comes to the revelation. Like, he wanted to go back in time, be God, and then make the universe as he saw fit. But now he's realizing, as he is God, he can make the universe no better. He has to make it the way it is.
Yeah, he realizes
Yeah.
that the universe is perfect as the way it is. Like now that he has seen its creation, he understands why everything is the way it
Yeah,
is. And he
man
can't
is
ruin it.
imperfect, but as close as one could hope to be, because they always strive to be better.
Yep, and then he creates the universe, and like Doctor Strange and Mordo return to the modern day of 1974.
He also says his name is not Sissenegg, but Genesis. Like that clever inversion name paid off.
Usually I think that's the dumbest thing ever, but I think it actually kind of works here.
I would have liked it better if he was Cagliostro the entire time. Honestly,
I think that's fair.
The Seismix is just such a weird name that.
But in like this world with all these other names, I'm like, it didn't stand out as extra weird to
By
me.
the eye of Agamotto.
extra strange. You mean?
Yeah, like I mean, is he part of the Hoary Hosts of Hoggoth
I
or
love
whatever?
That. That
Like
was always
it's-
my favorite.
And so that ends the story, is that he witnesses basically God make the universe, which I was blown away when I finished that tale, not only because it wasn't about fighting him to have him relinquish control of all magic, but rather trying to like push him in certain directions.
Yeah.
And also that Marvel published a book that's like, God's not real. It's this silly
No, God is
magician
real. It's
from the
just this-
31st century.
Well, that's what Doctor
Or,
Strange
like,
is.
the God you know is a lie.
That's what his quandary is at the end, is because he wakes up in New York in 1974 on New Year's Eve, or on New Year's Day or whatever, and he says, like, did I witness a second Genesis, or was that the original biblical Genesis?
Yeah.
And, like, I like that open-ended, like, was this just a Doctor Strange plot, or is this what happened all along?
And just as a note, as a final note, because it'll be important for our second half of this special, Mordo becomes catatonic after seeing the universe because he's a baby.
Yeah.
Baby.
What a baby.
From a bitch to a baby.
What we're talking about is relevant because Steve Englehart and Steve Brunner actually anticipated a backlash to the story, so they actually faked a letter to Marvel saying, "Hey, I'm a Catholic priest or something, and I think this book was very creative. Use on religion."
Wow.
Like he did that in advance, so like by the time it was like out, they already got like the letter. Like or people, Marvel's like, "Wow, Steve Englehart, people are excited about this biblical take on."
Especially priests.
Yeah.
That's pretty
So
good.
great.
They don't find this offensive. That's funny, though.
So concludes our first story. Now the second story is.
I love. By the way, I know you, Darryl. You were saying how it's interesting. It's shocking that they would like meet God or say God's not real, whatever.
Yeah.
But like,
God's not dead.
Even though it's overdone in stuff like anime and video games, I love it every time.
It's also
I hate God.
it's
says
not
Phil.
something you see in the 70s
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
in Western media.
Do you know when I was buying Xenogears as a kid? The guy at Funko-Land or whatever, or GameStop, tried to tell my mom that it's like a very controversial anti-religious game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, come on, Mom, it's okay. You just kill God or something.
It's just a
fine."
game. It's a video
Yes,
game.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't expect it from something like as mainstream as like Marvel
Yeah,
Comics.
that
Yeah,
too.
yeah, that's true.
Like
Yeah.
you'd expect it in like some weird offshoot.
And Japanese
Yeah,
Japanese
exactly.
things are way more comfortable doing that, but it is
Yeah, because they weren't.
Yeah.
They're godless commies.
Yeah. Well, they're just less. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're less. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Godly.
Godly.
Fucking scum. But, so getting to our next story.
Whoa, wait, that just sunk in. That was a harsh thing to say.
I mean, they are heathens that need converting.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Much like Clea in this next story.
so the story is, so speaking of godlessness, this next story opens up, it's Doctor Strange hanging out with Clea in the Sanctum Sanctorum. I don't know, is that pronounced? I don't know.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so he's hanging out with Clea, and she's showing up. She makes a rabbit come out of a hat. She's like, "Oh, look how magic has progressed."
That's pretty funny.
And as Doctor Strange walks,
She's just flirting with him.
oh yeah, she wants the
The
Doctor
way
D.
magicians do, I guess. Like
He did
here's a
mention in
rabbit.
the earlier arc, like during his existential crisis, that like as he gets so cerebral and like trying to find his place in the grander scheme, like Clea grounds him,
Yeah.
and like reminds him of his human side, and like he
Yeah,
loves her,
those-
and that
those are his,
keeps him from going crazy.
good relationships, just like with like Superman and Lois, is that you need someone to ground you in reality when you're so
Or like
powerful.
Yeah.
Swamp Thing, and
Yeah, that especially.
It actually reminds me a lot of Something in Heavy.
Yeah. So as Doctor Strange walks off, a religious zealot named Silver Dagger, who's just like a crazy
Oh no,
old.
he doesn't walk off. They bone down, and then he as soon as they're done, he's like, "I must sleep now. Please leave."
I need to like meditate like so hard after that.
And I
He,
like that
goes into a
Clea,
trance.
Clea talks to the rabbit, and she says, "He is so much a man, little rabbit, so much."
But the religious zealot climbs up to the window and he makes the rabbit grow big, basically pointing out that Doctor Strange has magic to protect him, but not like magic's just like fucking around magic.
I hate that. I honestly hate that explanation because it feels like such a loophole. They're like, well, his magic can detect any hostile threat, but is really a giant rabbit a hostile threat? It's like, yeah, it actually is.
Yeah, I thought that was dumb.
He also does kick Krillin here in the stomach, and that none of his magic senses that as a threat.
Also, the window breaking or any magic coming into your sanctum should be a threat.
Yeah, the reason
Yeah.
is that when the window breaks from the inside, because the rabbit jumps out of the window to let the silver dagger in, that
It's like
wasn't
his
like
spells
a
must be
threat.
so specific, like they're like computer code.
That's
like,
what I was saying.
Well,
Like,
they use magic all the
from out-
time, so I imagine they can have a catch-all protection against all magic inside the sanctum.
It seemed kind of hand wavy to
Yeah,
me.
the beginning of Englehart's always, his arcs are great, but the beginning of the stories are always just like, and then this just happens.
Well, that'd be relevant. That'd be relevant discussion because this is why a lot of Englehart's run was retconned by other writers because they're like, we don't want to do this anymore. We're just gonna Doctor Strange be weak. No more Sorcerer Supreme, and we'll get into that.
Well, yeah, it would make sense if you're a writer.
So, what do you prefer? Do you prefer this whole entire I'm connected to everything to be gone and have the bullshit maybe come up another time, or have it be gone completely and be irrelevant? That's a question I'm gonna bring up later.
Okay.
That's more of a next time
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So he owns like Darryl pointed out, he just kicks Wong's ass and hypnotizes Clea by taking her by surprise to make her under his control. And he steals Doctor Strange's Eye of Agamotto. If you watch the movie, it's that thing Doctor Strange used to control time. Mm-hmm. And in the comics, he's more to basically, I don't know how to explain it, but basically like to peer into souls of people.
It's like an all-seeing eye.
In the
Yeah.
movie, really, that should have been the Book of Cagliostro that he was using.
yeah, exactly.
Technically.
And basically, he stabs him, Doctor Strange, with a silver dagger because silver can apparently go through magic.
I love that.
Yep.
Too.
And he says, "Die, demon, die." 'Cause he...
Yeah, so Doctor Strange meditating, and the silver dagger stabs in the back, and then silver dagger runs off of Clea. And after that, Wong takes the injured Doctor Strange, and he brings it to basically Doctor Strange's crystal ball, the Orb of Agamotto, which we mentioned in the Dracula episode that he used to find Thor's bullshit, whatever it was, the lion head.
Oh yeah.
And,
Oh my god.
but in this case, he goes to see the orb to see where Cleo's been taken, but the orb starts sucking him in. Tentacles come out and start sucking him in, and he realizes that Doctor Strange realizes that the orb is powered by necromancy, and he ends up inside the crystal ball.
Yeah, and the reading here, it's a splash page of like the skull in black and white. Kind of, it looks like it's scratched on, and it's Doctor Strange multiple like him falling through it.
Yeah.
It says, "Crystal may appear to be clear, still pool of nothingness, thin and ethereal, but it is glass and it is solid. Imagine yourself falling, not through space, but through solid, infinite glass into the eye of death."
That's so
And
cool.
it's like that stuff is just, that's what I like about Strange. Is it's literally strange, like things to imagine. It's like it's very like inventive and creative.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think creative is the best way to put it.
Yeah, so Doctor Strange wakes up in the orb, and he's next to the hookah smoking caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland.
Speaking of creative,
Yeah.
Let's steal other creations.
I'm guessing Bruno had a thing for Alice in Wonderland because he also worked on Alice in Wonderland illustrations. So, the hookah smoking caterpillar explains that he's trapped in the orb, and being trapped in the orb means he's trapped in unreality.
But he says like you could go back if you want, but then you'll be in a body that's about to die.
Yeah, like he says the reason why he ended up here was he's subconsciously trying to escape death, and the only way to escape death is to go into unreality. So that's why he's here.
yeah, which is that becomes the whole theme of the arc is like as you lose yourself to unreality.
And the music, Norman She Wanted, Mama Spaghetti.
Mom Spaghetti, knees weak,
Spaghetti.
arms unreality,
Yeah.
and how it's like reality is you're dying. And the only escape from that is to just lose yourself to unreality. But then
Yeah, to go
you
to a
don't-
place where you're neither alive or dead.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So the caterpillar turns into a monster and fights Doctor Strange as he tries to walk off. But and Doctor Strange seemingly kills him, but the caterpillar, being in reality, can't die. And as is revealed later on, nothing in this world can die except Doctor Strange.
Yeah, because nothing has a soul.
Yeah, and the caterpillar chills out and he says, "Okay, you're cool with the dude for trying to kill me, but you can't fly out of here because really is no sky here. There's no up here. I mean. So the best way is to try to head for the center of the orb, and Doctor Strange goes and tries to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, as you head towards the center, you get closer to getting to the outside, you dig?
It's basically like Lost.
Yes.
Sure.
What is that reference to?
Sure.
I don't know. It's
I don't remember Lost at all anymore.
Yeah, it's
It was a fever dream.
So the next issue starts with Silver Dagger decapitating Stephen Strange in the middle of his room. And then he immediately is like, "Oh, too bad this was just a mannequin and not his body. That would have been great."
Yeah.
He was doing it in front of Clea, and he's basically torturing her, trying to break her spirit and
Yeah,
convert her to
because he
Christianity.
wants to convert her to Christianity because he keeps calling her like a demon, and he wants to cleanse her of all her demons
Which
and everything.
the first issue just had him like mentioning Doctor Strange as a demon, and I was like, okay, that's weird. But this is where you start to see a little bit more of him. That's like, oh, he actually like he's a zealot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he uses the eye of Agamotto to see that Doctor Strange is alive. And we see Doctor Strange getting attacked by a giant worm trying to eat his soul.
It's called the Soul Eater.
Yeah, it's
literally.
called the Soul
Good
Eater from the hit game Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
Or
And
the anime Soul Eater.
It's not Soul Eaters. It's not the
Yeah.
most original concept.
And Doctor Strange realizes, wait, if I'm in unreality, I could do whatever I want. And he uses his astral projection, and his like soul leaves his body.
Well, actually, his actual self gets sucked out of his body by the Soul Eater, and then he realizes I can do shit.
Oh, yeah, you're right. So Doctor Strange then escapes, and he fights the Soul Eater and frees all the souls.
Yeah, he goes into the Soul Eater's head and just starts blasting its nerves.
Yeah, because all these other souls are in there. They're like, you're basically fucked. We all just get sucked in here. And he's like, what if I just explode his brain? And then it works.
Yeah. And then because of his memories of the Silver Surfer shows up because it's like the unreality Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
And helps finish off the Soul Eater. And then does Silver Surfer lead him to the castle, or does he just go?
Well, they follow. They basically they're looking for his body because his body left while his astral form was fucking up the Soul Eater.
Yeah.
And it turns out.
And the body walked by itself to the castle.
Also, I
Yeah.
need to. This is super important, but this castle is Dr. Wiley's castle, like to a T.
It is.
It is. It actually is.
Doctor Strange's memories also prove that he's a Mega Man fan. Apparently.
Yeah. So he follows his body to the castle, and inside he sees Doctor Strange's body is getting drunk with a bunch of other superheroes.
Yeah.
And it's the Defenders, and like Spider-Man's there, and Daredevil's there, and Hawkeye's
They're
there.
all drinking tea, like with the Mad Hatter. But
Yeah, it's very Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out that the Defenders in the comics are not the Defenders you're going to see on Netflix. For some reason, they use the name, but the comic Defenders are all the misfits of Marvel. Like, they're called the infamous non-team team. So it's a bunch of people that everyone hates, pretty much, like Silver Surfer, Hulk, and like some Mariner.
Darryl's favorite, Namor.
Yeah. Like pretty much like the anti-heroes of Marvel are the Defenders.
Yeah. And then another one of Darryl's favorites shows up as the White Queen, Valkyrie.
yeah,
And she doesn't call them all male chauvinist pigs, so
Boo.
obviously this is unreality and
Yeah,
not
like-
the real Marvel universe.
That's how Doctor Strange knows things is getting fishy. Like, oh, it can't be the real Valkyrie. I'm not a male chauvinist pig, apparently.
Yeah. And then Doctor Strange tries to leave, but all the heroes, especially Hulk, get really mad because they're like, "You should stay for dinner. Like, Hulk needs friends."
Well, first Hulk is like, first you don't say anything during dinner because he was just his body standing there, not his soul. And then now you're just leaving. Fuck you, and just beats the shit out of Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
And he like stuns them all with magic. But it's like Hulk can't be stunned because Hulk has no senses or something.
Hulk has no
This
brain.
is such a cool, like, Englehart's writing for these guys. It's all narrative bubbles, and it says, "Is it possible, do you suppose, for an unreal creature to be struck deaf, to find its illusory eyes overwhelmed and struck blind, to discover its fanciful mind struck into chaos?" And it's just like, it's that writing that this is why, like, if you're gonna do writing in a comic, at least for me, I really like it being more poetic.
That's why I like
Yeah.
this era of comics, the Bronze Age, because this was before they kind of cut out narration entirely, but they got put more effort into it.
Yeah, and this has there are a lot of word bubbles per panel. But I really like reading it because it's fun to read.
Yeah.
yeah.
But what happened was, it turns out the Valkyrie explains, like, you shelved this pig. It turns out that since you're unreality, we're all unreal and you're real. You basically fucked our brains up a bit.
Yeah,
and,
you're
we
the
attacked
only
you.
one here who can die. So and because of that like dichotomy, it like has everyone in unreality kind of acting like crazy. and she gives him his Pegasus to fly to the center so that he could like be saved and go home.
Yeah.
And at this point, Silver Dagger says to Clea that he just watched Strange die, so she thinks he's dead.
So he rides his Pegasus. It recaps the story, and he rides his Pegasus to like this town where everyone is apparently dying, and then there's 3 other men that come out at like the gate to meet him, and one of them reveals himself to be Famine. So they're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse as he goes to meet death.
And all the other emaciated people, it turns out, like, as he gets closer to death, these are all people waiting to meet death, basically. And they're all, like, trying to kill themselves, saying, please let me die, I want to die.
And they're waiting outside his palace, but he doesn't let them in.
Yeah.
So they're all, like, begging him. It's like, please at least give me death. Please let me go there. And as he goes there, he's allowed in.
Yeah. And they try to grab onto him as he's doing it, but Dr. Strange's like, fuck off, and he flies by himself.
And again, I think, like, going to more of the abstract here, like, it's a cool idea that Doctor Strange got stabbed, is dying, and like figuratively in this weird unreal universe is able to move towards death as he's physically dying. Like it's just a cool like abstract way of him confronting his own mortality.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even as like brief as this world is they visit, it's a really neat idea that everyone here wants to go and meet death because they're so tired of being like these ragged shells.
Yeah.
Of life.
It reminds me of like Dark Souls, like in Undead Burg.
So then he falls through this portal in some trippy classic Doctor Strange stuff.
Probably my favorite panel. It's like him getting shrinking into like a warp hole, like in movies they show like Star Trek when they're going to warp speed, but it's like his whole entire body's doing that.
And you have like 3 boxes of just his eye, like his eye opening, closing because he can't believe it, then a zoom in on his eye opening again.
Yeah.
And then he falls through into basically like the cosmos. It's space.
But death is presented as a skull imposed on space.
Yep, and basically a meteor hits his horse and turns his horse straight into bones. And
it looks so
explains
cool.
that anything in this realm that touches you, even subatomic particles, are basically killing you.
So it's like an antimatter matter kind of thing.
Yep.
But he also explains that now Strange is in the real world, and in the real world everything is death, basically.
Yeah, so then they end up having a battle, and with Doctor Strange trying to like escape him and fight back against them, but it's one of those things where it's like, you can't beat death or escape death, and death makes it known to him. And they go on like this, they have a long discourse about that, just talking about like the nature of death and what Strange is trying to do.
This is like the coolest part of the arc, but like it's kind of hard to summarize in like a podcast. Like you kind of have to just read
without
this.
going page by page and just explaining what each of them like say to each other.
Because it really is this like confrontation with like the inevitable death of everything. Like, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and it ends with Doctor Strange basically realizing that he's accomplishing nothing and he has to accept death.
Well, it's because he finds like eternity, and it's like, oh, this is the counterpart to death, and he's like, I can go in eternity, and death can't reach me here.
And then I like that death explains. It's like, well, eternity is a man-spawned concept. That like he can still like push and pull against it. It's form that he's in. That Englehart stuff definitely is real like crazy. Where like he's in, it looks like he's in the white shadow of a figure, which is Eternity, and
Eternity actually is a figure in Marvel.
That's from Stan Lee's run.
We'll get into Eternity in the part 2, but he's actually a figure that represents all creation. In Marvel,
and as he's flying around with it, it's slowly like bending and warping, and growing emaciated and thinner.
Yeah.
And doesn't at this point he gets visited by Ancient One Kenobi, and it's like...
Well, that's after. First he accepts death and dies, and after he dies...
Like, he realizes, I can sit in the shadow of eternity forever, and it doesn't matter, because Clea is still trapped, the universe will go on, my body is still going to die when I get out, like, I can't keep running from death, I have to accept it.
Yeah, I have to return to the real world, because I can't influence the real world for hiding here.
Yeah.
And so when he dies, that's when he meets the Ancient One.
Yeah, so he gives himself up to death, and Ancient One basically pulls like Obi-Wan Kenobi and is like,
"Oh,
it was a
test."
Yeah,
he's like, "Luke, you've turned off your targeting computer. What's wrong?"
but this is one of my favorite things about Stephen English's run. Basically, he explains that what happened was Doctor Strange. This is like basically their tests as being Sorcerer Supreme that happen naturally, and basically one of them is confronting your natural mortality. And he says, like, once the Sorcerer Supreme confronts death willingly, now you no longer fear death of natural causes, and you can live indefinitely, just like the ancient one did.
It's like the kind of the Eastern philosophy of if you're looking for a way to escape death, once you accept that you will die, then you become eternal.
Yeah, it really feels like that, like that Buddhist thing. Like you have to reach a state of spiritual enlightenment in order for your body to fall in line with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the last, really should have ended there, but the last, you have to solve up the Clea
you gotta
thing.
tie it up, and
You gotta defeat Silver. That's why I like the structure story. Maybe I'm the only one here. I like the fact that I like stories where Silver Dagger is no threat to Doctor Strange, but since Doctor Strange is so entangled with this as a powerful character, he's so entangled with this greater in life concept that this minor villain is basically getting away with murder, basically.
That's true, and it is cool. I think in a lot of fiction where you have the hero's journey, and then he becomes powerful near the end, and then has to go stop the villain. It's like he has the upgraded gravity gun now.
Yeah.
The last issue, that issue is definitely the climax, and then this is just like, well, how does Doctor Strange resolve this? Because we all know he will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now Silver Dagger decides to tell Clea his origin story. So he's
Which is
like,
pretty cool.
Yeah, he's like, you've been talking blasphemy and witchcraft this whole time. You don't have to surrender yourself to the Lord. And he's like, let me tell you where I came from. You think I'm insane, but, they called Christ insane, too. I was actually in the Vatican. I was a
Cardinal.
bishop. He was a cardinal.
He was vice pope.
He was almost, but he was set up to be the Pope, but the Pope
Like, how the cardinals, they vote on the next Pope every time.
Yeah.
He was being groomed to be the successor.
Yeah.
But the cardinals basically had their own little meeting and ousted him.
They said he was too fanatic.
Yeah, the Pope tells him beforehand, saying, we all know you're the most religious, the best guy, but all the cardinals are political and they don't want a fanatic, so you're not going to get it. And
I like that they say, where he says that they passed over him because publicly the cardinals speak of your youth. Privately, they murmur of fanaticism.
Yeah.
It's like they too would probably be afraid that this guy would
go crazy and try to,
if he knew
like he did.
that.
Yeah, so he goes into the Vatican library, and of course they have magic books there, and it just takes a few days to learn.
Just like the real magic, the real Vatican.
Yeah, so he.
You mean just like God? He reads for 6 days and 6 nights, but on the 7th, he succeeds in mastering magic and then collapses.
Yeah.
Just like
right.
God.
And I like how they show
it's true.
They show the Necronomicon in there too. It's like the Vatican has all these really cool books, I guess.
Yeah.
I actually really like. The thing I really like about his origin is that he goes after he learns a little bit of magic. He starts going around the world, people like Doctor Strange and Batman did in the origins.
Yeah.
But this is what probably would happen in real life if they had teachers just willing to teach anyone this stuff. Like he learns the magic and he kills the magician with it.
Yeah.
And he's like,
But it's also because he must be some inherent savant, because he learns it better than they do every time.
Well, he
Yeah.
has unending devotion to God. So
Yeah, it reminds me of in role playing games where you have the more holy you are and more devout you are, the more power you're granted.
yeah, like if I tactics, he has the higher faith stat.
Yeah, he has 99 faith.
Yeah.
But doesn't leave. He doesn't leave to join the church because he was already there.
And even though the backstory is pretty long, it's really cool to get establish some more depth to a character that when he appeared in that first issue, I'm like, is this some stupid old Doctor Strange foe that has a big white handlebar mustache and always uses silver daggers? But then it's like, oh, this guy's actually, there's a lot more to him than I thought.
Yeah, and he goes to Egypt and India and all these places that Westerners will be like, wow, so exotic. And then he's like, I gotta go kill the Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One. But then by the time he gets there, Ancient One died, and it's Doctor Strange who's the new Sorcerer Supreme. So he's like, I gotta kill him. And basically what happens now, Doctor Strange comes out of the orb and enters real reality. And he accidentally enters the Doctor Strange mannequin that's decapitated.
Basically, as he exits the orb, it's so chaotic getting to reality after being unreal.
Yep.
That he's just like, I don't know where I'm going. Doctor Strange body. I guess I'll enter
I'll go to the Doctor Strange body that doesn't have a big knife in it.
And basically he goes to Clea and he's like, hey, this is my essence or something. And he
joins with Clea, basically.
Yeah, he merges with her essence and she becomes really powerful to escape. And then he goes to his real body. And when
the Silver Dagger's chasing him down, he meets a beggar on the street and he's like, do you have any change? And Silver Dagger's like, you're a skeleton now, fuck you.
Yeah, that was like, okay.
And then
that's just to show he's a bad guy.
yeah. And then Strange's like, I gotta go fight him. And Clea's like, can I come? And he's like, yeah. And then Wong's like, can I come? And he's like, no, you're Guardian.
Get the fuck out of here, Krillin, Guardian.
Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, oh, keep yourself safe.
So if you remember, what's his name? The Silver Dagger has the Eye of Agamotto, and he turns it against him. He's like, you can't even fight this. And then Clea and Strange
He
turn
says,
the
I am knowledge, you are learning.
yeah. And he turns the Eye of Agamotto against him.
Basically saying it's not a weapon, like it's not like a gun, like you hold it to and shoot it at people. It is a
conduit for any who understands it, and I am Sorcerer Supreme, a man of knowledge. Well, you are only a man of learning, which I kind of find funny because he just learned to not fear death in the last issue, so he is learning too.
But no, now he knows.
Yep.
Now he knows.
Yep. Now he knows everything. No other trial.
I think it's supposed to imply that like Doctor Strange internalizes it, while Silver Dagger doesn't believe in magic; he just uses it as a weapon to kill people.
Yeah, it's more about that.
Yeah, he reads books to like figure out something, and instead, like not really, like you basically said it, internalizing it.
Yeah.
And then so Silver Dagger's like, oh shit, I am a crazy religious guy. And he falls into the Eye of Agamotto.
Yeah, because Eye of Agamotto makes him realize his true self.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm shit. And then we see
I'm shit.
We see the comic end with him chilling with the hookah smoking caterpillar.
Yeah.
And they're just like, all right, I guess this is my life now.
Yep.
This is non-life now.
They're talking for the rest of eternity, and the caterpillar couldn't be happier.
Yeah. That fucking end. It's like that last line.
I like it. It's like a cute little note on this really trippy story.
Yeah, it's a cute ending.
Yeah.
So now let's pretend we're in the world of unreality where we're not continuing this for the next episode. Would you guys read more of this?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Sly?
Oh, definitely. I read them more.
I know.
I love this.
So did I. But that's the segment. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, I love how much Englehart focuses on like philosophy and discussion for Doctor Strange's stuff. Because when you are that powerful, it's like that's what's more interesting. It's like
and, they do put in the like action scenes because they have to because it's a comic, but like they're never like done for too long. They're kind of interesting, and the comic still has that feel of like the more interesting abstract like highbrow stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's just really cool, and I mean it's no Nemesis, but it's like it's still it's up there.
This is how you do pulpy stories,
Yeah.
where it's entertaining, but it still has some meaning to it.
Yeah,
quite a bit of meaning, I'd say.
I agree.
Definitely.
There's a lot of like meaning in the confrontation with mortality. Like it's
I also like how Doctor Strange struggles with taking life. Like when the caterpillar starts fighting him, he has to blast it to get it off of him, and he's already like remorseful that he had to take a life, not knowing that the caterpillar is unlife.
Yeah.
But it's like that's just neat to see.
Yeah, that's actually why I really love Doctor Strange and why I don't like the modern day Doctor Strange as much, because his devotion to life is forgotten by most modern writers. But
yeah,
that's.
I mean, watching the movie, I was like, he just seems like another one of the Marvel superheroes, just with magic more than he. Like there was trippy stuff in it, but his attitude is still like, haha, one liner.
Actually, the movie I would say got it closer than most of the recent comics, because they actually say, "I'm a doctor. I have to protect life. Like I can't kill these sorcerers." Like he was trying to find a way to
and
avoid
also the movie is his journey to becoming
that's true. That's
one
true.
with the universe. Or
he does like he is an asshole and then realizes I shouldn't be an asshole. Sorry, spoilers.
Yeah. Spoilers. Superhero movie actually has the person becomes superhero at the end. So we read the apex, the peak. What was?
Apex.
We read the peak. Yeah, we read the
pinnacle,
the crest.
We're at the top of the hill
of Englehart's run. Next time on Divisive Issues, we're going to see how it ended and devolved into another chaotic hurricane after his run. Spoilers: Doctor Strange gets cuckolded by Ben Franklin.
That's a good way to end it.
Wow,
we should have our next time on Divisive Issues be like a TV show. Next time on Divisive Issues, then it's like, I can't believe you said that, Ryan. And then we argue, and then it's like, then it cuts, and then it's like, spoilers, and then fuck you, Phil.
Sly, how could you cuckold me?
We're all cooks. That's the twist.
Dun, dun. Next week, Wednesday, at whatever time Sly wakes up.
So just before we say goodbye, I just want to quickly plug, I made a separate announcement, but in case you didn't listen to it, we did launch a second podcast that's on the weeks that this isn't. It's called Oops, I Talk Politics, and it's exactly what it sounds like. First 2 episodes, by the time this comes out, the first 2 episodes are out, and we talk about Hamilton and the movie Crash, and hopefully this episode we kept politics out of it. I think it's because we had that other way to vent.
But we talk about religion instead, so one time rush the topic to another.
But I would recommend everyone join the Facebook group. It's Oops, I Talk Politics. And see how mad we are. And you can
mad as in crazy, not as in angry, because we're insane.
You can
crazy libs.
You can find that and the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever you get podcasts, and rate and review both of them. But I guess because we're here, this one first. And thank you guys for listening. We've been Divisive Issues, and I've been Genesis.
I've been the giant rabbit in the hat.
I've been the Hoary Hosts of Hoggoth.
And I've been Sorcerer Supreme!
Stay in continuity.